No man misses a woman, he misses himself, the reflection he'd like to see in her eyes. The absence of a woman is a secondary absence. What really hurts is realizing that even when you try, dress up, invest, give, you're not chosen. And that's when chaos sets in. Because the pain of not having a woman isn't physical, it's existential. It's the silent proof that you might be invisible, that even giving everything, it's still not enough. And this realization is the beginning of an internal collapse that no one teaches you how to reverse. What men call neediness is actually a desperate cry for recognition. The illusion of scarcity arises when you believe that the absence of a woman is the central problem in your life. But the truth is brutal. If you believe a woman will fulfill you, it's because you already feel like an empty vessel. And no empty vessel is attractive. It's just a walking need. Behind the supposed need to have a woman lies a mentality of self-scarcity. What's missing isn't sex, it's not a kiss, it's not a hug. It's personal power. It's the feeling of being desirable without having to prove it. It's the inner authority that replaces the desperation to be accepted by someone. Desire for a woman often arises not as a biological impulse, but as an anchor for self-esteem. And this is the fatal mistake, using another person as an emotional crutch. Most men live this cycle like emotional zombies. They wake up, work, smile, go out, but all of this is done against a silent backdrop that repeats day after day. You're alone, and no one wants you. This constant whisper undermines your presence, your gaze, your energy. And like an inverted magnet, you repel what you desire most without understanding why. The absence of a woman doesn't just mean loneliness. It means that, at least in that moment, the universe doesn't see you as magnetic. This doesn't make you any less of a man, but it does reveal that your capacity to generate impact, connection, and value is still under construction. And here comes the most uncomfortable contradiction of all. While you insist on seeking a woman to solve this inner hole, you distance yourself even further from her, because nothing repels as much as desperation disguised as kindness. Seduction, contrary to what popular culture preaches, is not made of ready-made phrases, money, beauty, or performance. It is the art of becoming someone impossible to ignore. And this doesn't begin with touch. It begins in the absence of it, in silence, in the gaze, in the way you fill a room without needing words. And this kind of magnetism only arises when you stop begging for love and start cultivating presence. Robert Greene asserts that the effective seducer doesn't chase. He creates tension. He builds fascination. He understands that the human mind isn't attracted to what's handed to you on a silver platter, but to what's withdrawn at the right moment. Fascination is born in lack, in mystery, in control. And this is where many fall short. They confuse transparency with exposure, honesty with need, intensity with necessity. They want to be loved, but they don't know how to position themselves as the prize. This is where the brutal paradox arises. The more you pursue a woman, the less she notices you. Because the energy of pursuit is born of lack. And lack, even disguised as kindness, always smells of weakness. Nietzsche said that what is done for love is beyond good and evil. But when you don't know who you are, any love you seek will only be a reflection of your confusion. The question then isn't how to win a woman. The question is, why do you believe you need one to feel whole? Need reveals that you haven't yet understood your own worth. And until this is resolved, any woman who enters your life will confirm your feelings of inadequacy. The wound only changes shape, but remains open. Cleopatra didn't seduce Caesar with her body, she seduced with her narrative, with the impact of her presence, with her mastery of her language, her timing, her silences. While other women gave everything away at first glance, Cleopatra created layers of interest, doubt, and fascination. And so even as just one woman in the midst of an empire, she made kings bow. Because the presence of someone who knows themselves is infinitely more powerful than the desire of someone who begs to be seen. So the truth is this: no one misses a woman. What you miss is being that man who would naturally attract a woman. What you want isn't sex. It's validation. It's knowing that among so many, she chose you. And this only happens when you stop living for the sake of being chosen and start building yourself as someone who chooses. And here's the hidden key no one gives you. The right woman isn't won by insistence, but by contrast. When everyone kneels, the man who stands tall stands out. When everyone fawns, the man who listens and disappears leaves a scar. The female mind doesn't desire the available, it desires the memorable. And memorable isn't the one who talks the most. It's the one who says little and leaves a big mark. A man who is at peace with his own presence creates an almost uncomfortable tension. He doesn't need to prove himself. He doesn't need to shout. He doesn't need to impress. His confidence fills the room like a force field. He's not searching, he's building. And that's what attracts. Not what you do for her, but what you've built within yourself that makes her want to be part of your story. You don't need to have the perfect life, but you do need to be in motion. You don't need to have the body of your dreams, but you need to carry an energy that makes it clear, I know who I am. And if that's not yet clear to you, that's the work to be done. It's not about winning women over. It's about not needing them to feel complete. And precisely because of that, attracting them easily. Because the man who understands this, who looks in the mirror and realizes that the absence of a woman isn't a problem, is the same man who, weeks later, becomes the one women want to understand. The mystery isn't in what you say, but in what you keep silent. And that silence, when powerful, speaks louder than 1,000 desperate declarations. You've probably noticed this in practice. The more you chase, the less it works. The quicker you give in, the less she values you. This isn't female cruelty. It's biology. It's psychology. It's social strategy. The human mind is designed to pursue what arouses curiosity. And if you have nothing more to reveal, there's no reason for her to stay. Most men waste energy trying to prove they're good enough. But the truth is that seduction begins when you stop proving and start provoking. Provoking emotions, provoking curiosity, provoking reflections, provoking silences that create tension. And none of this can happen while you're trying to fill yourself with a woman's presence. The energy of need cancels out the energy of attraction. Always. And if you still doubt this, think about the women who most attracted you. They probably weren't available. They probably had something extra you couldn't decipher. Maybe it was the look in their eyes. Maybe it was the way they laughed. Maybe it was the way they disappeared for days without losing their impact. It was the mystery. It was the dominance. It was the lack of rush. And this is something you can cultivate too, if you stop rushing. I'm going to explain a profound concept to you now. The wounded masculine, how you were castrated by a lack of initiation. Understand, you are not weak, you were poorly initiated. And this difference changes everything. The pain you feel today is not a whim. It is the muffled cry of a warrior who was never activated. A man who was never taught to bleed with dignity, to lose wisely, to win with purpose. Your masculinity is not broken, it is dormant. And the reason for this is simpler and more cruel than it seems. No one taught you to be a man. You grew up hearing that you needed to be good, respectful, polite. You heard that you needed to listen to women, understand them, please them. You learned to be kind, but you were never taught to be desirable. You learned to be present, but you were never trained to be magnetic. You memorized everything society demanded, except the code that female biology still respects. And so now, you feel lost, you're frustrated, you sense something is wrong, but you don't know where you went astray. So you blame yourself. Or worse, you blame women. But it's not your fault, nor theirs. It's the fault of the system that destroyed the rite of passage that forged true men. In every ancient civilization, a boy only became a man after a brutal rite. He was removed from his mother's presence, exposed to fear, cold, and darkness. He was challenged by elders, physically wounded, or psychologically humiliated, until he broke with childhood for good. It was the symbolic end of comfort, dependence, and magical thinking. It was the entry into a new dimension, that of responsibility and power. Masculinity only emerged under pressure. But in modern society, this right has disappeared. Boys were not initiated. They were anesthetized. They were overprotected, overindulged, overdistracted. And the result was an army of grown men who still operate with the fears and insecurities of a 12-year-old boy. You see it every day. Grown men who withdraw at the slightest sign of rejection, who cry because they don't know how to act, who lose themselves in pornography, social media, addictions, and romantic fantasies because they can't bear to face their own emptiness. This isn't weakness, it's a lack of instruction. The boy who hasn't been initiated into pain ends up addicted to pleasure. He desperately seeks something to fulfill him, to distract him, to lull him to sleep. And herein lies the trap. He believes a woman will solve this. He seeks in her what he should only have found in other men, leaders, mentors, older brothers, present fathers. But he hasn't found it. And so he turns female desire into obsession. He doesn't just want to be loved, he wants to be saved. And herein lies the root of the chaos. A woman didn't come to save anyone. She is a reflection, a mirror, an extension of his own energy. If you're still fragmented, insecure, lost, she'll notice, she'll feel it, she'll back away, and you'll call it rejection. But it's not. It's just nature restoring balance. The feminine only surrenders to the masculine when it proves itself a safe haven. And safe haven isn't gentleness. It's presence. It's clarity. It's dominance. Neil Strauss in The Game describes the TFM archetype, the average frustrated fool. He's the man who does everything right but is never desired, who treats well but doesn't arouse excitement, who is polite but is always left for later. Why? Because he was trained to be functional but never forged to be fascinating. He knows how to get along with women, but he doesn't know how to lead emotionally. He understands the words but doesn't master the subtext. The wounded masculine doesn't scream. He withdraws. He is silent. He pretends everything is fine while living trapped in a cycle of self-punishment. He thinks he can't make mistakes, that he needs to please all the time, that he must walk on eggshells so as not to scare, to not seem invasive, to not be cancelled. And in the process, he castrates himself. And by castrating himself, he loses his vital energy, the same energy that generates attraction, leadership, desire. A woman doesn't want a lamb. She wants a wolf who knows when to bite and when to protect. A man who knows how to say no firmly, who knows how to lead, propose, and lead, but without needing to dominate or control. A healthy masculine man doesn't impose, he inspires, he seduces through the magnetism of his conviction. He doesn't need to shout to be heard. His silence already carries a tension that changes the temperature of the room. But this is only possible when you accept it. The version you were taught to be no longer works. Today's society wants you to be nice. But nice is almost always the most dangerous. Because he represses. He pretends everything is fine. He accumulates frustration. He molds himself to please, and deep down he feels anger at not being valued. He doesn't say what he thinks. He doesn't express what he feels. He acts like a servant waiting for rewards. And when they don't come, he implodes or explodes, and loses everything. Again. The man who has never been initiated remains an eternal beggar. He begs for affection, attention, recognition, and because of this, he is always in a position of inferiority. Not because the woman is superior, but because he unconsciously places himself below her. And every woman feels this. Energy doesn't lie, the body doesn't lie, the look doesn't lie. And even if she likes you, even if she feels connected, something inside her will hesitate, because you are not yet the man she can follow. The initiation process needs to be restarted. Not with tribal rituals, but with brutal courage. You must consciously choose to walk through the fire. This means exposing yourself to discomfort, facing rejection, telling uncomfortable truths, assuming your limits, practicing silence, redefining your values, killing the needy child that still lives inside you. And this is difficult. It's lonely. It's brutal. But it's necessary. And here comes the most powerful twist of all. You don't need a master to initiate you. You can be your own initiator. Life presents you with tests every day. Situations that require poise, courage, leadership. Every no you avoid saying. Every woman you try to please for fear of losing. Every situation you avoid facing. All of this is a denied initiation. But every time you choose the difficult path, the path of risk, of truth, of exposure, you activate the masculine within you. You bleed inside, but something is reborn. Conviction. You won't be loved by everyone. You don't need to be, but you need to be respected for yourself. And this only happens when you realize that female approval can no longer be your drug. You can no longer measure your worth by how many messages you receive, how many likes you get, how many women notice you. That's the stuff of a boy, of an immature soul, of a fragmented man. The initiated man knows that his presence is enough. He knows he is desirable not for what he offers, but for what he represents. He carries a symbol. He has codes. He has his own language. He has silence. And most importantly, he has choices. He doesn't depend, he decides. He doesn't wait to be accepted, he sets the tone. And it's at this point that the masculine self restructures. When you stop chasing and start building a center of gravity so strong that everything begins to orbit around you. Women, business, friends, opportunities. Not because you've changed on the outside, but because you've finally activated the inner energy that was dormant. And that energy, when awakened, makes you inevitable. From here on, there's no turning back, because you'll realize it's not about getting women, it's about becoming someone who will never be ignored. Not because you shout, but because your presence changes the playing field. Because when you enter, something changes. And that, my friend, is what separates the ordinary from the memorable. But for that, the old you needs to die. The boy needs to leave the scene. The good guy needs to be buried. The pleaser needs to be silenced. And in their place is born the man you always wanted to be. Not the one who waits to be chosen, but the one who builds the kind of life any intelligent woman would beg to be a part of. You're probably wondering now, how to become the object of desire without having to chase? Let me explain it this way. Most men run. They chase women, attention, validation. They run as if love were a trophy to be won with every forced smile, every ignored message, every viewed but didn't reply. But the man who runs never wins. Because in the game of seduction, the trophy goes to the one who remains still, while everything around him revolves around him. This is the brutal twist. You only become the object of desire when you stop chasing the desires of others. There's a huge difference between wanting a woman and needing her. The man who wants a woman but doesn't need her carries a fascinating energy. He chooses calmly, acts with precision, speaks little, and yet is still remembered. The man who desperately needs to be chosen exudes an anxiety that intoxicates the environment. And this difference, invisible to the eye, is brutally clear in the silent language of biology. The first step to turning this game around is understanding a concept few master: perceived value. It's not what you have, it's not who you are on paper. It's how people feel about your presence. And presence is an invisible currency. It can't be invented, but it can be constructed. The problem is that men trained to please have lost the ability to generate tension. And without tension, there's no attraction. Tension is what makes someone pay attention, feel intrigued, and want to understand more. You don't have to be the most handsome. You have to be the most impactful. And impactful is the one who dominates the field, without saying a word. Body language speaks before your mouth opens. Your shoulders tell you if you're trustworthy. Your gaze tells you if you're afraid. Your silence tells you if you're the prize. And your walk, your rhythm, your timing, it all communicates. The man who understands this stops trying to impress and begins to orchestrate his energy like a conductor at war. This is where the power of not giving a fuck comes in. The most feared and most misunderstood of masculine powers. It's not arrogance, it's not rudeness, it's emotional freedom. It's when you reach the point where you no longer need the other person's response to validate your position. You're not there out of need. You're there by choice. And if she doesn't want it, that's okay. You won't chase, you won't beg, because your inner abundance already tells you, there are others, there are more, there's the whole world, and he's in my favor. When a man embodies the true power of not giving a fuck, he becomes rare. Because 99% of men are still programmed to submit to what the female gaze approves. They measure the value of an encounter by the outcome, not by the expression of their own power. They're always trying to adapt to what they think she wants, and they never ask what they really want. And here comes a game changer that few practice. Instead of trying to be the ideal man for a woman, start building the ideal woman for your world. Yes, you read that right. A man who lives in emotional abundance doesn't seek to fit in. He creates context. He doesn't ask if she'll like him. He observes if she fits the lifestyle he's building. He has criteria. He filters. He selects. Because he understands that true seduction isn't about being chosen. It's about choosing with intention. This isn't theory. This is fieldwork. This is practice. You see it in men who aren't necessarily rich or handsome, but have something magnetic, clarity. And clarity seduces. Because in a world where everyone is trying to please, those who stand firm in their truth stand out. A woman may disagree, but she'll respect it. She may not fall in love immediately, but she'll remember. And sometimes remembering is all you need to plant a silent obsession. Robert Greene calls this poeticizing your presence. It's not just being there, it's being remembered. It's leaving a trail, an unanswered question, an unnamed emotion, an absence that weighs more than 1,000 presences. This is done with emotional control, with strategic scarcity, with a mastery of time and silence that most men are afraid to exercise. But that's precisely what makes you unforgettable. Want to see how this works? Imagine you meet a woman. There's chemistry, the conversation flows. She shows interest, smiles, touches your arm, compliments your vibe. What would 99% of men do? They'd stay there, trying to maintain the rhythm, prolong the contact, not let the connection cool. But the master of tension does the opposite. He leaves at the peak. He ends the night before it's over. He says something like, "I liked your energy, but now I have to go." And he does. Simple as that. No promises to text the next day. No anxiety. This simple gesture, leaving at the peak of your powers, does more for your seduction than 3 hours of forced conversation. Because you plant the question, why did he leave? And questions breed obsession. The brain loves gaps. And the man who knows how to create gaps masters the rhythm of a woman's attention. He doesn't give everything away. He doesn't over-explain. He leaves gaps, silences, doubts, and these doubts grow, and she begins to imagine you. And what is imagined becomes desire. That's what Cleopatra did. That's what Casanova did. That's what Marilyn Monroe did. They all had this mastery. The ability to not give themselves completely. The ability to control the timing of their surrender. The ability to create more questions than answers. They weren't just beautiful, they were mysterious. And mystery, when well constructed, is an aphrodisiac. But you don't need to be famous or historic. You just need to master 3 pillars: perceived value, emotional control, and strategic presence. Perceived value comes from your lifestyle, your communication, and your self-confidence. Emotional control comes from your daily training. You don't react, you respond. And strategic presence comes from mastering your timing. You know when to step in and when to step out. Now, pay attention to a crucial detail. There's no point in faking it. False detachment is as visible as neediness. If you try to appear indifferent, but inside you're dying for a hello, your energy gives it away. Therefore, this shift needs to be internal. You need to rebuild your foundation, and that takes time. It requires you to silence your addiction to approval, that you stop justifying yourself, that you learn to value yourself for who you are becoming, and not for the amount of external validation you receive. A woman worth having isn't looking for a sycophant. She's looking for a man who leads his own life, who knows what he wants, who knows what he won't tolerate, who has codes and doesn't compromise, and most importantly, who has choices. A man who can choose, and yet chooses her. This is the kind of presence that destroys all defenses. Because he's not there out of scarcity. He's there because he sees value. And that's the greatest validation a woman can receive. This is how you turn the tables. This is how you move from emotional beggar mode to desire creator mode. When you stop begging for attention and start building tension. When you stop molding yourself and start making clear what you tolerate, what you seek, what you value. You don't beg for connection. You inspire. Everything you've seen so far is just the foundation. It's the initial cut. But there's a deeper, darker, and more powerful level of seduction that can't be openly shown here. And that's exactly what's inside the complete audiobook of Forbidden Manual, How to Trigger Desire in 60 Seconds. This isn't another self-esteem course or another book of ready-made phrases. It's a psychological battlefield. A strategic manual on how to trigger immediate desire, disarm resistance, and become the man who walks in and no one forgets. This is forbidden territory. Hence the name, the Forbidden Manual. Because it's not politically correct, it's not tame, it's not comfortable, it's effective. And if you apply even 10% of what's there, your presence in the social world and in women's lives will change forever.